Okay, welcome to Math 31, Section 1.7. Exponents and order of operations are what's on tap today. So we're going to start out with the idea of an exponent here. An exponent is a shorthand way of writing a repeated multiplication. So an example, are repeatedly multiplying a 7. It goes 7 times 7 times 7 times 7. And the role of the exponent is simply to keep track of how many of those repeated multiplications you did. So we did it 4 times in a row, so it's 7 to the fourth power. In other words, 7 times 7 times 7 times 7 is written 7 to the fourth power. Okay, on the next one, there's actually three base values. There's 4s and 9s and a 2 at the end. And so you have to do these separately. So here's what it looks like. Let me make sure you see all of these here. The first one here, 4 times 4, shows up here as 4 squared. 9 to the sixth power is the next one, and then the 2 at the end. Now, if you want, you can actually supply an exponent on that too. Hang on, I gotta change the thickness of my pen. There we go. You can supply a first power on that too also. Okay, examples C and D. We're supposed to evaluate these expressions, which means find the numerical value you get when you multiply them all out. So I'll do this in stages here. First stage is to actually write it out. 3 to the fifth power is 3 times 3 times 3 times 3 times 3. And then you kind of group things here. So I end up with 27 times 9. Let me show you how I did that. 3 times 3 is 9, times 3 is 27, and then 27 times 9. And that turns out to be 243 is the value of 3 to the fifth. Okay, there's two bases on this one. We have a base of 3 that's repeated times itself twice, and then a 5 to the third power. So let me show you how I'm going to break this up here. I'm going to call this first part 9, and then if you take 5 times 5, 25 times another 5, you get 125. So in the end, we're multiplying 9 times 125, which is 1,125. Okay, this third section here, section C, is all about order of operations. And this is probably the most important part of this chapter. If you don't master this, you'll have trouble in math. Okay, the operations in view at this point are exponents, multiplication and division, and add and subtract. So let's write these out. The orders are exponents come first, do them first. Then multiplying and dividing, do them in order from left to right, not necessarily multiplication first before division. And add and subtract is the lowest priority. And again, if subtraction shows up first when you're reading from left to right, you do it first. But then we have a way of overriding these, and that's by putting parentheses. So parentheses get the highest priority. Then exponents, multiplication, and division are next to last, and the last priority is adding and subtracting. All right, so let's do a few of these. You have to get the order of the operations correct to get the right answer. So I see an addition and I see a multiplication. And we're going to do the multiplication first. So 4 times 7 gets done first. And then finally the adding gets taken care of. Okay, on this next one, there's an addition up front. And you see it right there. Followed by a division and a multiplication. Now, the adding is definitely lowest priority. So we're going to decide between the dividing and the multiplying. Well, the dividing in this problem is the one on the left, so you do it first. And 8 divided by 2 is 4. Now the multiplying takes priority over adding, so we do it. And finally, the adding. Okay, example G is a similar problem, except we have these nested parentheses here. You got parentheses, on the outside, and then you got parentheses on the inside, and it's those parentheses on the inside that dictate the first thing that has to be done. 5 minus 1 is where we're going to start this problem, and that gives 4. Notice that I'm writing down everything on every step. I'm only simplifying one little part of it, but I write down everything else. It's really bad practice if you start doing shortcuts. Okay, this next line here, we have to do the stuff inside the parentheses first. And inside the parentheses is a subtraction, a multiplication, and an exponent. Exponents are priority. So 4 times 4 gives 16. And still inside the parentheses, we've got a minus and a times. Times is higher priority. So 2 times 16 is 32. And then you finish the parenthesis by subtracting and finally add the 10 that's been waiting around the whole problem. Okay, example H is an example that has a long division bar. You can see it right through the middle there. And that long division bar implies parentheses around the top and bottom like that. They're not written, but you must finish all of the top and all of the bottom before the dividing happens. Okay, so across the top, we're going to divide by 8 by 2. And the parentheses is priority down below. So this 3 plus 1 is where you start. Okay, once you've done those, then you finish the top, 20 plus 4. And the bottom, you do exponents before subtraction, so let's do that. And finally, the division comes into play. 24 divided by 12 is 2. Okay, we have a few problems from geometry. And we're supposed to find the area and the perimeter of each of the squares. Well, to find the area, you multiply, length times, or side length times side itself. So in this case, 13 times 13. And we get 169 square centimeters of area. And then for the perimeter, there's 4 sides of the same length, so it's just 4s. In other words, 4 times 13 in this problem. So that would be 52 centimeters of perimeter. Okay, we're down to the last few problems here. And what we have to do in this one is find the perimeter of this irregular object. So let me show you how to kind of get these. We have 2 missing sides that we need to find here. Let's concentrate on one at a time here. So this distance is all the way across the shape, which is 12 on the left plus 8 on the right. In other words, 20 meters. Okay, let me get rid of those highlighting, and once I've done that, I'll show you how to deduce this part here. Okay, so the whole height is 11 and the lower half is 5, and as a consequence we know this must be 6 meters. Okay, so now it's just a matter of adding these up. I'm going to start with the 20 and go clockwise. Okay, the rightmost column adds up to, let's see, 14 and 5. This is 14, and 5 is 19. 3 more is 22. Okay, now that 10's column adds up to 6. So this is 62 meters of perimeter. Okay, on this last one here, we're going to find the perimeter, so we can make a fence around it, and then calculate the cost at $16 per foot. First of all, the perimeter, you just add all the side lengths. And then once you have that perimeter, it's $16 per foot, so 154 times 16 finishes this section. Okay, so I hope this helps you, and give us give a little bit of extra attention to the order of operations section. That is probably the most important part of this whole first chapter. I think I mentioned that earlier.